Dr. Ben Michaelis is a clinical psychologist, an author, a keynote speaker, and a visiting scholar at Columbia University. And you may have seen him on one of his many media appearances talking about mental health issues. And he's got something new going. It is called 1 Minute Diagnosis, and it's a video series that we will be featuring here on the app. And that's why we're going to talk to Ben today, and it's great to have you, Ben. Thanks.
Thanks for having me, Jordan.
So let's take a quick look at one of the 1 Minute Diagnosis videos that we're talking about.
To be diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, a person's anxiety and worry must be associated with at least 3 of the following symptoms. They feel restless, nervous, or on edge. They are easily exhausted or worn out. They have difficulty concentrating on everyday activities, or their mind goes blank. They are irritable and easily annoyed or angered. They experience muscle tension. They have difficulty falling asleep and staying asleep, or they become restless and experience poor sleep. And that's generalized anxiety disorder in a minute.
Why do a series of 1 minute diagnoses?
A lot of this information is obviously available if you look through the DSM or other manuals, but to be able to have the information in a way that's easily digestible so that you can say, hey, wait a minute, I'm curious about that. I had an experience with someone not that long ago who was describing to me what was clearly a panic attack, but she didn't know what it was. And I thought if there was some way to put this information out there so that people can just get it instantly, I thought it would be really helpful for people.
So Ben, what happens if someone watches one of your videos and they say, yikes, some of that describes me, or I checked 4 of those 8 boxes that he talked about, or that is exactly my boss or my sister? What do you do with that information?
If you've been struggling with something, but you're having a hard time understanding what it is or putting a label on it, this provides those labels, which I think can be comforting for people, because if they know that this is a diagnosis, that it's not just something out of the blue that they are alone in struggling with, just knowing that there's a name for it can feel very empowering for people. And the same thing for people that you love or you're friendly with. If you see that someone is struggling with some of these challenges, knowing that they may, from your observations, meet the criteria, may prompt you to help them get the services they need.
I think most of them are set up this way, where you have a checklist of different things to look for, or characteristics of a personality disorder, for example. And sometimes there are 8, sometimes there are 7, sometimes there are more. Do those characteristics change, or can they change in a person over time?
So with personality disorders are lifelong challenges. That's what's different about personality disorders and acute disorders. So acute disorders are things like depression, or generalized anxiety, or panic disorder, or even in more serious cases, things like schizophrenia. Those are acute disorders that can flare up and cool down. Personality disorders are a lifelong situation where this is the person's characteristic ways of being in the world that tend to be maladaptive. And so you can kind of think about it as sort of stable instability. So it's part of their personality, but especially if they haven't gotten treatment for it, it negatively impacts their lives and their relationships over the course of their life.
I was very focused on your video on narcissistic personality disorder.
A person with narcissistic personality disorder has an inflated sense of self, needs to feel admiration from others, and lacks empathy.
Was there anyone in particular who you were thinking about when you were putting this video together?
There have been a lot of questions about what narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder is as of late, because of some people that have been in the media more lately, and what that means, and whether it's dangerous or how it's dangerous. That has been the video that's gotten a tremendous amount of a number of views and an interest. Because when you have a personality disorder like that, it certainly can negatively impact you and the people that you are responsible for.
Continuing on this idea of current events and things in the news, lots of people all over the world are stressed out about world events, about politics, about climate change. Big question, but since I have you on, and since you think about these issues a lot, some advice to deal with what seems like a fire hose of stress that is getting a lot of us soaked.
The main way to do something with these challenges is to take action. And so if you are feeling overwhelmed by some of what's happening in the world, choose one or two things that are most dear to you and take action on them in some way. It doesn't have to be a massive action, but just knowing that you're doing something to help address these issues and make the world a better place is significant, and it can feel a lot better to you.
I assume you would agree that having some people in your life to help you to do this, who are there as supports, just people to vent to, not a bad idea, right?
Absolutely. I think that having good friends, having good social structures, having good, obviously a family if you can, and other things that help to relieve stress are critical, because look, we can't get through life alone. Life is a team sport, and knowing that you've created a community around you is one of the best factors for reducing stress and mental health in general.
If you don't mind answering, what stresses you out?
It's a good question. What stresses me out?
I stumped you with this one.
Well, I tend to think that when I'm stressed, it has to do with like some system that is not being taken care of. So if I find myself stressed, I usually think, am I tired? Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? And the answer is almost always yes. And so there are things that stress me out, but it's usually when some other physiological stressor is putting me in a more vulnerable place to be stressed. And so just taking care of those things, sleeping well, eating well, taking care of your body has a tremendous impact on taking in potential stressors and your capacity to deal with them.
We're not running all of your videos, so if people are interested in finding out more about you and seeing more of your video work, where should they go?
They can go to drbenmichaelis.com, or they can just go to oneminutediagnosis.com, and the library of videos will be held on that site.
It's great to have you, Ben. Thanks.
Thanks for having me, Jordan.